It's kind of cool for me as a missionary being on the other end of the stick. Missionaries traveling around to churches and church to church hopping, and it's kind of fun to be on the pastor side and having missionaries come and share, especially with missionaries that we love and appreciate, and we know exactly where they stand. It's a tremendous blessing. So, Brother Matt, please come and share. I'm put this here. If you bring your Bible, that's good. God bless you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. It is good to be back with you to look it up.
Is your microphone turned on by any chance?
Is it turned on? Yes. Okay, good. We were first with you in 1992, so it has been a good long while. There it shows it's on. That's better. We'll be able to get it broadcast a little bit better that way for the people who aren't here this morning but are listening in. So 1992, that's been a long time. That was before we actually went to Australia. We spent 30 years serving the Lord in Australia, loved it, and God did some tremendous things during that time. Those of you who have known us for a long time would know that Barb and I are also involved in a sports ministry where we take people from good, solid churches like this one to major sporting events. Now, I know this is Super Bowl Sunday. Let me not bust your bubble here, but that's not a major sporting event. Only about 100,000 people get to go to that, maybe 150,000 if you really stretch it high. When I'm talking about major sporting events, I'm talking about something like the Soccer World Cup, where 6 million international visitors go to see it. Not 150,000. 6 million international visitors. Or the Summer Olympic Games, which will often get 4.5 million people that will go. And while these people go and they are there, they have a lot of time on their hands to have conversations. And that's one of the neatest things to do at these events is have conversations with people from all over the world. The last Olympics, I personally had conversations with people from 78 different countries. Our group had conversations, gospel conversations, with people from 132 different countries of the world. And we shared the gospel with them. When he says, go into all the world and preach the gospel, sometimes that's one of the easiest ways to do it. Our record is the organization that we lead has had the opportunity, the highest ever was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where we shared Christ with over 200 nations in 10 days. God just gives us wonderful opportunities like that to be able to get the gospel out. Is it effective? Yes. We have seen over 12,000 people come to Christ and to get connected with a local church. We're only counting the ones that we know that get connected with a local church because the pastor responds to me saying, yes, we've got them now and are discipling them. They're attending our church. That's the 12,000 number. We have seen it spark church plants, and God has done some wonderful things that way. So we have 3 different videos for now. So who was it who was talking to me about Australia things this morning? They were asking if I do things Australian or say things Australian because we spent 30 years in Australia. What do I do when I do 3? That's the Australian way of doing it. Rather than 3 different things, I did the Australian. All right. So we were also in Australia for 30 years in church planting. And God gave us a wonderful ministry there. We'll get into why we left a little bit after some videos. We're going to watch a series of 3 different videos. What I'm hoping is he's going to do that first one that will give our bosses understanding
ABWE
of what,
Construction is planning and building with purpose. And our purpose is to carry out the Great Commission through proper planning.
That was right.
Start it again.
ABWE Construction is planning and building with purpose. And our purpose is to carry out the Great Commission through proper planning and construction of ministry-related facilities around the world.
When people come and see the building, they always comment about how well it is built, how it's maintained, and this was in part because of the construction team that was here.
We have the opportunity to come alongside field teams and help them with a project that will propel their ministry forward. And we make sure that those field teams don't lose a single step along the way when they're in a construction project, so that way they can remain focused on their ministry, calling, and their mission and vision.
Having the construction team here on site helps us as leaders. We don't have to worry about anything. We can focus on working in the community, and meanwhile, construction is working on building. They're working on the details.
And our team is unique. We're made up of several missionary families, but we're also consisting of hundreds of volunteers who help with the planning as well as the construction of projects.
So it's been a huge help to have them, true professionals, helping us go from a good building to an excellent building.
If this is a ministry that is calling you, maybe you're involved in planning or you're involved in construction, we'd love to have you as part of our team.
In 2024, my wife and I, after serving 30 years in church planting in Australia, transferred to ABWE Construction. It's our desire to make it possible for people to do the work of the ministry that God has called them to. We can take care of the maintenance, we can take care of building shade structures or whatever else is needed so that they can concentrate on compassion ministries, healing bodies, and doing the work of the ministry and leading people to Christ. As we've surveyed the needs, we have seen opportunities in so many different areas, whether it's operating heavy equipment or plumbing or carpentry. The opportunities abound for people of all the different trades. The Vision Project is a whole nother thing where they look to expand the buildings, and we need workers. How about you? Has God called you to consider serving a long-term or medium-term or short-term missions project to help the missionaries to be able to serve the way God has called them to? In 2024, my wife and I, after serving 30...
All right, that's the 3 different videos that we have these days that share a bit of the ministry that God has called us to. The sport event evangelism, that last one that we just saw there, we are presently working towards the next event being this coming summer. This last week, I put together the Farsi booklet. You saw the booklets that we were giving away. I put together the Farsi booklet, which reads from right to left. Not easy to be able to put those things together. Anybody know who speaks Farsi? What nations speak Farsi? Oh, there we go. Yes, Iran. Yes. So Turkey does too. Big parts of Turkey also speak Farsi. And so they will both be here at the Soccer World Cup. And so we thought, well, we do this so that we can reach nations that are harder to reach. I have purposefully gone to, back when they were in it, purposely gone to North Korean soccer matches. Do I have a huge desire to watch North Korea play soccer? No. Do I have a huge desire to be able to reach into the lives of North Koreans while they're out of their country? Yes. Oh man, I have some great stories about talking with them in the stadiums. I ended up in the long run getting arrested for it, but nothing happened. I got away with it. You could say, you're not supposed to hand out literature that's not sanctioned inside a stadium. But as I'm walking out the door, there's one more North Korean that I hadn't talked to yet, and I hand him a booklet and in Korean, and he rejects it, and immediately I got nabbed for doing something I wasn't supposed to inside a stadium. But they let me go a couple hours later. I never went to the police station or anything else. They just yelled at me for a long time and asked what it was that I was, how do I know what this says? Well, I can tell you because I'm the author, okay? I can tell you what it says, but I can't read it. I don't know if you're telling me the truth. Why would I lie about this, you know? You want to talk about it, I can go all the way through it. I had run out of my English ones already that day, so I didn't have one that I could give them in English. But God is good, and we have seen some great things. At that very stadium, I had a cameraman from North Korea who, when he realized what it was, took and slid it inside the casing of his camera for the video that he was taking for the country of North Korea so he could hide it, and then sealed it back up so that he could keep a little book that God knows what he's doing, great things. We have been able to go to countries where you wouldn't normally want to or think that you could go to be able to share the gospel through sport event evangelism. I've been in Russia, I've been in Qatar, in the Middle East, and God has done some wonderful things through that ministry. We currently are working on this summer's booklets. The booklet's all written and all translated. I don't have one that's been printed yet, but you can see previous years. The one with the soccer field is the previous version of the booklet. We're doing it, updating it a little bit and making it a little bit better for ministry these days. We learn as we go along, and we try to implement those things to make it more effective. If you are a big soccer person and would love to be involved in this year's Soccer World Cup, we do have people who will be reaching out just over here in the South Bay area at the stadiums here. I would love to come back for the Australian game, but that's just desire. That's not really. Probably won't happen because I'll be leading the group that will be in the Dallas-Fort Worth. This year is completely different about that. Think towards the 2028. It's going to be in your state. You'll have all of these visitors coming to California, down in LA. But as you think, anytime you think of all of that, pray that God puts together all the pieces for that Olympics, okay? There's a number of things that will need to happen The number one thing that we're really working at right now and haven't been able to secure is a place to have people come to join us. When we do this, we normally supply the room and board, so food and lodging, and transportation for the people once they get there. And that's in one package price, and we try to get the best price that we can. LA didn't build a whole bunch of new hotels and all that kind of stuff. All of the state schools are full. We talked with Masters when we were down there a couple weeks ago, and Masters says, well, we've already been approached by 2 countries and they would take up our whole place. But we think we align with you better theologically. We will consider an offer from you. We've made that offer. Please pray with us that they accept that offer, or at least come back with a counter offer so that we can have that. Is Masters the best place for this? No. Transportation's going to be way harder. Transportation costs are going to be much higher because Masters isn't in downtown LA, and the extra cost and expense of all of that. It's going to be interesting. If you have a large passenger van and would consider possibly coming to the Olympics, I really want to talk with you because we might need to use a bunch of individual passenger vans. We've already been told by Hertz, I looked it up, Hertz is expecting to charge $3,000 a week for a van during the Olympics. So we're hoping that we can get some churches that might have vans, or people in churches that have vans who would be willing to come down and do some driving for us during that time. We can do some on public transportation, but pray with us. Pray with us that God would put all of that together and work that out. As far as this summer's outreach, jumping back to that one last thing I'll say about that, and then we'll move on to the other aspect of our ministry. I'm having a problem with translators this year. We've never had the problems before. Some of them are very slow. And if you're going to do a soccer World Cup outreach, first one in after English was Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. So I had that one all done really quick. But you would think of all the different nations, what would be the second most important nation you would need, or language you would need after English? We got China, yeah, not North Korean. We don't have Korean, but we've got Chinese, we don't have French this year. Our French translators have not come through for us. But even bigger than French would be Spanish. My Spanish translator has not gotten through to me. Sounds sad. She's a grown adult lady at 40. I talked to her dad yesterday and said, I haven't heard from your daughter. And he communicated with her, and she said, oh, I don't know why. So she's going to figure out what she did with it and try to resend it or do it again for me. She's a good translator, works actually now for the UN in translating in Spanish. So I need to be able to have that, to be able to produce it, to be able to, we need that. The other thing that we're looking forward down the line for is somebody who would be willing to do some of the graphic layout and design for us in InDesign. It's a specific program that the printers most often want that we can get produced anywhere in the world. Right now, that really eats up my time. That really eats up my time to be able to do graphic layout and pagination. InDesign. InDesign from Adobe. Yeah? I know it a little bit. And I have been using it for years, but as it's upgraded, I've not kept up with it and what have you. And so, yeah, we're looking for people who can occasionally help us on some of that and keep things up to date. So pray that that all works out. Somewhere along the line, God will open those doors for us, for the right people to be connected with that ministry. So really important. Now, you might know my wife, Barbara, if you haven't seen her here yet. and I were blessed to be your missionaries in Australia for 30 years. Like I said, we first came to this church in 1992. We made it to the field in June of 94, June 8th of 1994. The last day of full-time ministry for us in Australia was June 9th, 2024. We had completed another church plant. We handed it over that day to an Australian to carry on in ministry, somebody who had been an associate of ours for a year and a half, and with great confidence placed it in his hands and under the direction of some of the other churches in the fellowship and connecting there, and the Lord moved us out of Australia. You have heard me say in this church, if you've been here in the past, that if God ever wanted us to leave Australia, he was going to have to really jerk my chain. Don't say that. If God wants to move you, then God needs to make clear to you. That's a better way of saying it. Why do I say don't say that? Because it really doesn't feel good to get your chain jerked. Especially if you're as stubborn about enjoying living in the place that you do and enjoying the ministry that you've had, and then God jerks your chain. Yeah, sometimes it almost takes your head off when he has to jerk the chain that hard because we're so stubborn. If God wills, I will this or that. Not I'm gonna, because it's what I want. So, in the 30 years that we were in Australia, Barb and I were blessed to be able to lead or work with 36 different teams down in Australia to work with us as missionaries. Some of them were more handy building maintenance or repair or remodeling kind of teams. Some of them were as vastly different as we had a drama group from a university come down to be able to do Pilgrim's Progress. Excellent for evangelism. Man, was that good. Really worked out well. But our boss, knowing that how do we want to say this? We needed to be able to pull back because the Australian people that we had trained, the missionaries that we had worked with in the past, knew we were coming to the end of a church plant, and none of them were willing to pick up and carry on in church planting because they said, oh, Matt and Barb are going to be done with theirs soon, and they're the ones who should get the next church plant. No, you're trained for this. Go do it. And so we found in several ways it was appropriate for us to pull back out of the ministry and get out of the way because we were the old timers on the field. And everybody looked to us at times when they shouldn't have been. They just needed to do the work that God had called them to. That is the biggest reason that we left Australia. Okay? And that's hard to think that we had to get out of the way. There were other reasons. We actually sat down and did the whole why we should stay and why we should leave, and there were 25 different reasons why we should leave. Everything from our age through to the government was really starting to not like the system that we were under in serving. All of the other missionaries were under a different system. Baptist Mid-Missions had to pull all their missionaries out because they were actually underneath the same system that Barb and I were in because we went in way back when everything was different. We were going to have to change systems that would raise our support a good bit just to stay doing the same kind of thing. And we were liable for an audit that could have meant we were going to have to pay fines and back taxes of $600,000 because our accountant lost the original paperwork. He had paperwork, copies, but not the originals. So they said, if you leave, we'll just drop it and we won't ever investigate, we won't ever do anything on it. Well, that was a pretty big thing for us and God jerking our chain, you know, and some of those kind of things. How do I come back to the church saying I need 600,000 to stay? That doesn't work. That just doesn't work. So because of the ministry that we've had in Australia, ABWE, my boss, was talking with the leader of the guy in the first video and said, Matt and Barb would do great at leading teams out to the mission field so that they can help the missionaries so the missionaries can do what God called them to. Does that make sense? Barb and my main desire right now is to be able to allow the missionaries to do what God called them to. Let me read a verse for you that you probably haven't thought in this way, but 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 4 says, "No soldier gets entangled in civilian pursuits, since his aim is to please the one who enlisted him." I read that verse and it really struck me as I was going through this transition, because so often we send out our missionaries, and I've been there, okay? Been there, done that. And we send them out equipped and ready to serve the Lord, and they're eager to do the work that God has called them to. And then we want them to take care of all the other little bits too. Getting entangled in civilian affairs. They move into a place where the kitchen is horrid, literally falling apart with rot. And we want them to figure out what they're going to do about having their own kitchen. Where if we're here, you probably just call a cabinet person in cabinetry and have them redo your kitchen, right? Well, that's kind of tough in some mission fields. Extremely tough in others. So who's going to do that? I had a missionary surgeon in Africa, one of my favorite stories, and it's a little bit gross, but you'll understand why. He's a surgeon, okay? He has his hands inside of people and everything all day long, and he had an African sewer system that was basically an extremely small holding tank with one pipe going out of it into standard dirt. It allowed one shower for that house, that building, per day, or the wife could do laundry. They have 3 teenagers living in tropical African heat. Do you want your teenage boys only showering every 5 days? Every 6 days? No. So they just needed somebody to come and do a sewer system for them. The The Africans did what they would normally do. It just wasn't sufficient. So in February, when Barb and I were down in Togo, Africa, we got into it. Tore out what they had and put in an American-style sewer system for them so that now the whole family can shower each day if they desire, and in that heat, trust me, you desire. I was taking 2 showers a day while I was down there, one when I got out of bed and one when I got off of work. And she can do laundry on the same days. Simple little things. But the surgeon that you send out to talk with people about Christ and to work on the interiors of people's bodies doesn't need to be worrying about civilian affairs of his sewer system. Somebody needs to be able to do that for them. While I was down there, I also did things like maintenance on the generators that power the place when the main electricity isn't on. You know what it's like to be in the surgery and all of a sudden the lights go out? Or to be laying in a bed with a heart monitor and all of a sudden the heart monitor goes out because the electricity's off. The surgeon and the medical doctor doesn't need to learn how to do generator maintenance on a V8. That's what they had at the time, was a CAT V8 generator. I can change the oil. You know, I can do the basic maintenance for these kind of things. So our task right now is to do for the missionaries what needs to be done so that the missionaries can do the work that God has called them to. As long as I am able, I desire to serve missionaries, to be able to see them be more effective in the ministry that God has enabled them. Now, you could see from the middle video, there is a number of different teams that we take down to do that. I am not a know-it-all. I don't have all the skills, okay? And so there are times when we take tradespeople. I don't know if we got tradespeople in here or all white collar, but tradespeople who know their craft and are willing to give. Well, the last trip I took was 10 days, okay? A solar panel system and what have you needs to go into one of the hospitals because every time the generator cuts in because the power goes off, there was a 10 to 13 second delay. Okay, that's okay, but if you're in surgery, you don't want the lights out 10 to 13 seconds, okay? They finally have been given permission by that local government to put in a solar system with batteries and everything else so that the power delay flip over is 1/3 of a second. Far better for the hospital to be able to operate. But where the government insisted they place the solar panels and where the power goes into the whole compound was 750 yards away. 750 yards. They insisted that all of the cables running from the solar array to the power station be buried at least 1 meter, that's just over 3 feet, deep, in conduit, a minimum of 3.5 inches around. So we ended up with 9 pipes down this 3-meter deep trench. Well, who's going to do that? The doctors have to take time off of work and not see patients for days on end because they're learning how to put in a trench? No. I took a father and his 2 teenage kids who he wanted to see a different life, to see missions firsthand and what it is to help the missionaries. And we went down on Thanksgiving Day. Flew down there to be able to, we were only able to get about 450 of the feet, 450 more feet done. There still are just about 200 feet short, just short of 200 feet short. And the solar company is coming to do all of the installations in April. Okay. The guy who normally does maintenance for the hospital is on furlough. He's in Idaho. He's heading back the end of next month. They do have a backhoe. They do have a backhoe. I was running backhoe because I got kind of sick. And nobody down there knew how to run a backhoe. There is not a single African that they have trained that stays with them because they find they can make $150 a day for a private company where for working for the hospital, when the standard hospital worker makes $20 a day, they were paying their backhoe operators $50 a day, but they didn't have backhoe work every day. So they would leave to go to work for somebody who would pay them better over and over and over again. So they quit training backhoe operators for a while. And there was nobody else there that knew how to run a backhoe. While I was down there this last time, I had 2 different viruses in 10 days and malaria. So being in the backhoe with a cab was kind of safe. I was away from everybody else. And I could operate the backhoe even though I was a little bit delirious because I was on codeine part of the time. No OSHA requirements down there, okay? I didn't have any accidents. Well, I did tear up the power, but to one house. But somebody needs to be able to do and help and minister in these ways. You saw in the video we had a young lady looking through a transit to be able to do some surveying work. She did all of the surveying for where the trench needed to go, and while she was there in June with me last year, did the survey for where, when they expand the hospital, where the sewer system line needs to be able to go. She did all of that, plus helped with about 150 feet of the trench for the solar system with us, because she knows what she's doing. For me to do all of that transit work and all of the elevations and all of those kind of figuring, nah. She's a civil engineer. I just got an email from her yesterday. She's raising support to go full-time. And we're excited about that. She's going to be living over in the Middle East by July this year, if the Lord supplies. And we'll go full-time just doing what the Lord has gifted her to do, and survey work and whatever else along the edge, living in the Middle East and in Africa. God does some wonderful, wonderful things. So that's the overall ministry report that we would have for you. Now, this church in the past, sometimes you've had heaps of questions, lots of questions, whatever you want to say. I'm talking Australian again. Sometimes you've had heaps of questions, sometimes you haven't had very many questions, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time, if I can, for questions. ABWE right now, as we stand here, or as I stand here this morning, has over $30 million worth of projects in progress. Most of those are funded, just not supplied with workers. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth evangelists. Well, evangelists too. But pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth workers or laborers into his harvest. Any questions that you have? Yes?
What about the upper echelon people, construction, who are they?
Yeah.
What kind of umbrella are they all under?
We still are with Association of Baptists for World Evangelism, okay? ABWE is an organization that next year hits 100 years old, okay? At any one time, right now, the last statistics I've heard, we have 1,400 missionaries someplace in the world. And we are working openly in 87 different countries. A number of other ones that we don't talk about because of, yeah. We have with the construction team that are part-time or full-time employees of ABWE, we have about 23 people that do this, that will take teams out or groups out and do work and come back. Some of them go for medium to long term. Some people, we have people who go 1 year in a foreign field and then they come back to the US or Canada for a year, and then they go back for a year, and then they go back and forth like that, okay? Because that's what they have to do for their living or for their responsibilities for their businesses. We have other people that just partner with ABWE, that are architects and designers and engineers, who simply say, my firm's door is open. If ABWE needs an architect, I'll give you the time. I'll travel to the field if I need to see what I need to in that country to make it work. And then I'll come home and I'll do all my work here in my office. So we have people who do that as well. That's not included in the 23 that work full-time with ABWE construction. We will work on any of our missionaries' projects anywhere in the world. We will help the missionary as far as their homes. Like I said, I think already I did 3 kitchens last year alone, okay, remodeled kitchens. We will work on our hospitals or cafes or the other projects that our missionaries are using to be able to share the gospel. We will help them build churches if that's what it takes. Not every country is that easy. We've got some big projects coming up, like one in the Philippines that should start sometime mid to end of this year for, if I say rescue ministries, does that relate? For sex trafficking? There's a big one coming that we're still trying to buy property that the government will let us do what we can do on it, what we want to do on it. That's the hang up. But as soon as the property is secured, the money's in place, but as soon as the property is secured, then everything needs to roll. Yes.
So how do we, as a small church, how do we know what projects might be available that we could plan 6 months or a year down the road and plan on taking a group of 3 to 10 guys, you know, to go work for, say, a week or 10 days? How do we access that information?
Yeah, absolutely. ABWE's address, abwe.org/construction, gives a number of different things out there. It gives context to be able to do some of that. Some of it would be just by contacting Barb and I.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking,
Yes.
if since we support you as a church,
Yep.
maybe we would like to just have a time to sit down and talk with you and ask you to scope out what projects, knowing a little bit of the skills that we have available,
Yep.
of something we could jump in and do, because man, those projects are great.
I had one of our missionaries hand me a page full of different stuff recently that they need in their location. This is just one location, and it's all there. And can I say it doesn't have to be just your church? I'm wanting us to think sometimes even a little bit bigger. If you can only get 1 or 2 guys that go, maybe this morning we drove over from Vacaville, Orchard Avenue in Vacaville. Maybe we get several of the CRBC churches who have 1 or 2 people who can work together, and we send a group from the CRBC rather than just an individual church. Most of our support comes from Northern California. Yes? Is there an age limit? For construction, they need to be capable of doing some work, okay? And the work varies. When I was in the trench last time, I had a 16-year-old with me, okay? Gluing pipe. We showed her how to glue pipe, you know? And so she was gluing pipe, and she was doing great at it. I've taught a 16-year-old how to run a backhoe, too. Upper age limit, you need to be able to do a little bit of work. And so, yeah, there are times when those kind of things, Romania, I know, is got some tile work coming up for a camp. We're building the cabins and what have you. We've got some work for a tile setter coming up in Romania. So there's if people can still do the work, maybe they're not as quick and as efficient as they once were on the upper age limit, but they can still do the work. They still know how to make those cuts and, you know, get that organized. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for, who are willing to go and serve for what it takes. Maybe they can't get it all done in one trip. This last trip I took on Thanksgiving, we only got, you know, a bit over 1/3 of it done. So, yeah, no, a bit over it, almost half. Yeah, 2/3, a bit over, yeah. Anyhow, other questions?
So is anybody doing the San Francisco venue for this summer?
Yes, we're going to be, you know, Pastor Chris, there at Highland. Peniello, Chris Peniello. What? And the Eldreds, who are just down the hill. Charlie, yep. We're going to be with them next week? Next Sunday, we're with them. Yep. And so they will have booklets stored there and be coordinating in conjunction with the days that are going and what have you there. Ken Doan from Vacaville went with us purposely to Paris because we gave him special grace financially to be able to get there, being our sending pastor and all. And also knowing that we've got this event this summer as well as 28, we wanted the CRBC to be involved. So we got Ken to come to Paris with us last summer. But, yep. That again, anybody can be involved. You saw the little kid. We had to cut it. The very next person he handed a tract to was a guy named Al Roker. You know who Al Roker is? Yeah. He's the Good Morning America, right? I haven't lived in America for a long time. He's the main. That was the very next person he handed the tract to. He asked us not to have him in the video. Okay, so he's not in the video, but I can say that. We just couldn't show it as much, put it on the internet, that kind of thing. And he gladly accepted it. So we have had very young kids involved in that because sometimes the little young kids are so cute, who's going to turn them down? But the conversations is the goal, not just the passing out of the literature. God's word will not return void. It will accomplish its purpose for which it was sent. But I'll get to you in just a second. When we were in Rio de Janeiro, we were in such a crowded space that 4, and I helped a little bit, so maybe you can say 5. 5 of us had a box of 800 booklets, tracts, okay? How long does it take you to give away, you and 4 friends, 800 tracts? A long time. During the Olympics, we were able to give, this is the fastest one we know of so far, we were able to give away that whole 800 in 11 seconds short of 5 minutes. So then I'm like, whoa, let's find out where people are throwing them away. Let's look in the trash cans, let's look behind the bushes, let's find out where people are throwing these things away. Because that was an outrageous amount of booklets we just gave away. And we looked and we looked and we looked for 20 minutes. We didn't find any not a single one in a trash can or on the ground. And so I then, as I stopped it at 20 minutes because I said, people, look, they're all sitting down reading these things. Let's sit down and talk to them. I found a grassy spot where a couple people were reading them, and I sat down in the middle of them and said, you guys understand what you're reading? And one person asked a question, and then a couple other people came over and sat next to me, and before I knew it, I had a dozen people that are there as I'm presenting the gospel to them in a way that relates to the Olympics, but also relates to their lives, and they get it. That's what it's all about, is being able to have those conversations and work it through. Can God use just a tract alone? Yes. We've had people contact us and say, 3 years ago, I received this booklet. I was reading it because I'm going to be an athlete at this one as well, and I wanted to get my head in the right space. And so I was reading all the junk that I received last time, but this changed my life. I now believe. Is it too late for me? No, it's not too late for you. And we were able to get them connected with a local church where they were from in Nigeria. So God knows. God knows. God does his work. It's our job to show up and be a part. You had a question.
Yes, is this sports event ministry under ABWE?
Yes, and no.
How do you overcome the language barrier at these events?
I don't have them with me. They're back there in the back, but on the table, you will notice, if you look at them, they're all paginated exactly the same. So if you have an English one, and you're talking with somebody who knows almost no English, The last person I led to Christ who couldn't speak any English was French. He had the French book. I had the English book. And we were going through it page by page. I was saying it in English. He was reading it in French. And by the time we got to the end of the prayer, his face is just streaming with tears. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. It's always by the Spirit. It's never me. It's never you. It's always by the Spirit. But as the Spirit moves, yes, yes. Yeah, fabulous stuff. And you can track with where they're going and what have you. There are QR codes. Right now we only have the English version up. I want to be able to get more of the other languages before the next event. Right. There's a reason we don't have English up right now, but we want to have supplementary verses. This is a short little booklet. We want to have supplementary verses and supplementary illustrations. I'd love to have a bunch of pastors who would simply record simple illustrations they love to use in sharing the gospel that we can put up there on just one point of the gospel. Why do we say God is just? What does that mean? Why do we say sin separates us from God? Why do we say Christ can be that substitution for our sins? You know, just one little bit, because then they can click on the QR code, go straight to that, see that. The last person I led to Christ who was French, he didn't do that. It was just from the book itself. He got it. It made sense. We are honing these books to make sure that we can do that as good as possible. If you look at the really colorful ones from the last Olympics, you'll notice that inside the front and the back cover are flags of like 196 countries of the world. The easiest way to get a conversation going is to show them a page of flags and say, where are you from? They take the booklet from you to find their flag. Now it's in their hands, and I've only had 2 or 3 people say, I don't want this, and try to hand it back. But everybody will show you where they're from and find their flag, because they love to boast about their flag. Just one more of those things that we've used to hone our booklet to make it as effective as possible. Yep.
So now that you're back in the U.S., where are you living, and how's your support?
Good questions. Can I answer one more thing off of her question? And then I'll get to that question, because I just remembered you asked me if it's under ABWE. Yes, gifts can go through ABWE and can go directly to the sports ministry that way. It is a subdivision of ABWE, a recognized subdivision. It is also its own 501c3, organized out of Oregon, because in some countries, like Qatar, we did not want to have the ABWE connection to be able to get in and work. Does that make sense? So the reason we say SEEC is because that's very generic. And Qatar, unless they look into it, doesn't realize that stands for Sports Event Evangelism. You know? And so we have to do work that way a little bit too. So in and under. But, yep. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Barb and I direct the sports. We are the top leader of that. I'm a lackey in the construction. I organize teams and get them to go out, okay? And we do whatever needs to be done. I'm a handyman that can do almost anything he sets his hands to. Where do we live? When we left Australia, it was important we move close to a big airport. And just before we were leaving Australia, our son decided he wanted to live in Dallas-Fort Worth. And then when he had a baby and he says, we really think we would love to have you close because we have no relatives and no friends here. Barb and I were like, you want us close? Huh? And you're having a baby? And so we actually bought a house a mile, 1.2 miles up the street from them. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area right now. I can fly directly from Dallas-Fort Worth to Australia nonstop, as well as Paris nonstop, as well, you know, all over the world. from DFW Airport. Very easy. I can't afford to live anywhere near San Francisco Airport. I live 10 minutes from the DFW Airport. You know? So that's where we live now, and that's part of the reason we live there, because we can afford it. The other aspect of your question was support. When we left Australia, we had a number of people who supported church planting in Australia, not Matt and Barb. We lost a lot, like 40% of our support. God has been very good and gracious, and over the last few months, we have been able to see new supporters come on, and a few increase, but we really were, December, we didn't get $500 of our paycheck because it wasn't there. It simply wasn't there. There was no money. We're different than in Australia. They would always send us our full paycheck when we lived in Australia because we were overseas. Here they say, well, if you don't have it, you don't get it. Oh, okay, we didn't know there was a difference. So we're learning that. Our support is picked up. We're still $650 a month short, right around $650. That's a lot to take out of your budget. And unless people send in extra gifts or we get out and get offerings like this, the budget just doesn't work right now. So, and when we're taking trips, last year I was in Africa 3 different times. Those cost money too. So we raise it. It goes to ABWE so that it's tax deductible, and then they reimburse us if the money's there. So we had outstanding expenses from April that we just got paid because the Lord has been good to us recently, and some more money has come in. So yeah, it was floated on our credit card, and then we personally paid that off so that we didn't have to pay a lot of interest. And now we're getting our own money back, you could say, from that. Yeah. Good questions. Those are important. Yep. We're about done? All right. Thank you so much. Let me pray, and then I'm preaching this morning, so we'll have more time then. God, we are so grateful for your goodness and for your glory. We're so grateful. It's not about us. It's about you and your work. Lord, you are doing mighty things. You are glorious, and we get the opportunity to see that all over the world. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with this church today and to encourage them as they continue to partner with us. Maybe, yes, through the finances, but also through the possible sending people out from here to serve. Lord, do your work and help us each to be ready to do our part as you guide and direct. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you.